So, I will call the meeting of the Missouri Valley Complex Committee to order. Can we call the roll, Steve?
You bet. Madam Chair, Lacombe.
Here.
Grillo.
Here.
Glickenfeld.
Here.
Horning.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Hilzendegger.
Here.
Martinezson.
Here.
Commissioner Munson.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you, Steve. I will make a plug one more time, reminder, especially as we're discussing items, to use your microphones in front of you so that it can be better picked up on the owl. We had distributed the minutes from the May 21st meeting. Are there any changes or corrections, additions to the minutes as distributed? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Motion and a second to approve the May 21st minutes as distributed. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Appearing none, therefore the May 21st minutes will be approved as distributed. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, let's plow right ahead, and Commissioner Munson, you grace us with your presence once again with a very long list.
I don't know about gracing, but I'll do my best. I had sent out the preliminary budget to you guys earlier on, just to give you an idea of the numbers that I had plugged into that budget. We meet next week as a budget hearing committee. The initial budget won't go to commission until a month later, so if there are items that you guys believe should be on there, things that should be changed, please get them to me this week so that we can get an amendment in before the budget committee meets next Tuesday. Some of the items, obviously I put the phase 3 on. Steve brought up a great point that if this becomes a city operation, that number will go down because the construction management side of it will end up being within the city contract to replace that road. So it's a placeholder at this point. It doesn't hurt us to have it on there. I'm sure there's going to be some other items that we as a group would like to move forward with and pay for, and so if we have that dollar in the budget, I'd rather leave it there. Our grading, our snow, our asphalt maintenance, that's going to be an annual every year. I had to put on the asphalt replacement again for 26 because I don't know if we're going to get it done this year. We were waiting for the sewer line to go through there because then whatever they rip up, they have to replace, and then we have hopefully less to replace. But I was told they were going to start this spring or even winter when it was frozen out there, and I haven't seen a whole lot of movement. So I placed that item back on the agenda around the budget for next year so that we were covered in case that's where it ends up. But questions, comments, thoughts, items that you want to add, please email me. I will get them added to it prior to our meeting on Tuesday.
Just a point of clarification for my brain, my memory. The snow removal, if memory serves, we went into 2025 thinking that the county was not going to cover the snow removal, that you were going to have to put that out to independent bid, correct? And then that changed?
Well,
Or where are we at on that?
the best way I can put this, and I believe the way Commissioner Schwab put it is accurate. In past years, the county highway department always did it for us, but we're never reimbursed for that expense. So it is important that it's on our books and we pay the county highway department to do the work. Because there's no reason that should come out of their budget when it's our complex. So yes, they're still doing even the asphalt, the maintenance, they'll do the crack seal, they'll do the chip seal, all of that stuff for us, but it's on our budget to reimburse them for the cost.
Makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Bree?
Part of that was my question, but my other question, and this probably, whatever, just gonna throw it out there. So you have phase 3 infrastructure, Swenson, Hagen. Is that not something, well, first, my question would be, is that something we even, need to bother with? And then won't it be bid out to the lowest bidder because of the cost of that? And then, of course, the increase in this budget is like over 100 and some percent, which is crazy when there's a 3% cap. So I mean, like, to me, this is ridiculous, and I get that you can present it and your fellow commissioners can just basically remove everything and set it back to where it was last year. So I mean, I think this committee should be more realistic about that. I mean, at 337% and no answer, or at least I don't know, and it's not maybe our issue, is whether or not your sales tax that's gonna cover the jail, is that really gonna help this 3% cap or not? I don't know that that's exactly been answered properly by the state. So I mean, this just seems a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little, I think it's a great wish list, but it's a little ridiculous. Cause it can't happen, I mean, just to be real.
So
In the
phase 3, we hired Swenson and Hagen for phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 3 was on their quote that we didn't accept last time because we needed to get through 1 and 2 first and see the direction of this committee. So phase 3, I wouldn't put it back out for bid because again, Swenson and Hagen did 1 and 2. But as Steve pointed out, if we choose and if the county commission agrees that this becomes a public road, that'll go away as well, because that will be part of the city's cost, which then gets assessed back to us. Now that's something that's not in our budget. If we become a public road through the Missouri Valley Complex, we're gonna have 500% increase in our budget next year or the year after to pay for the special assessment for that road. So, yeah, that 3% makes a big difference. Sales tax, I'll jump into that since that was brought up. We're still waiting for the state's attorney's opinion, which I'm pretty sure we're also gonna have to go to the attorney general's opinion to try to figure out how this all plays out. Being proactive as a Burleigh County group to have sales tax might have hurt us. It will be a great relief for the residents to be able to buy down or to, as Dustin likes to use, the right terminology would be tax reform, not relief. The 3% is based on levied dollars, not budget. So last year's budget was 40 million, we only levied 30 something. So our 3% is not on our $40 million budget, it's on our levied. So next year, if our levy is at 15 million because we have sales tax to cover the rest, our 3% goes to the 15 million. Now that's what we're looking for, an interpretation from the legal side of it. The other thing that Auditor Sponskowski brought up the other day is what the state did for property tax relief may hurt us as well. And so, because of our sales tax situation, we may hurt ourselves a lot in that world. But that's to be determined. We don't know. We're waiting for opinions. I'm very fearful of it, to be very honest. But we'll have to wait for the legal opinions to get to that point.
So, these dollars, these are coming from the reserve fund, correct?
No, these
No.
are our operating budget
Oh, okay.
that are levied dollars.
So, and what is the mill levy dedication to the complex right now? Do you know that offhand?
The mill,
Yeah.
I can tell you that last year's budget, was only, 88,000.
Okay. So is there a dedicated commercial mill?
No,
So then that's not affected by the 3% at all?
It's your budget.
The 3% cap is on revenue generated by property taxes, not on the overall budget. That's why sales taxes are, now, there's general fund sales taxes and then there's dedicated sales tax. And the sales tax that we passed in '24 is a dedicated, and it's going to swap out dollars that would otherwise be levied. And we did that intentionally, that language, if you recall, we put that in there intentionally just in case the Rick Becker measure passed, so that we wouldn't get punished and not be approved or qualify for the state reduction dollars if there was no property tax to replace on the local level. And so, as far as this budget is concerned, if there are not property tax dollars going into it, then that the 3% cap doesn't apply. Now, I would agree, I would prefer to see the upfront capital costs of this kind of work come from that reserve fund rather than the general fund, because I don't think that it is useful for this committee to ask the full commission to be spending general fund money on the, let's call it the reboot process that we're going through here, while there's $5 million sitting over there in the kitty. So I think that it's not an either or, it's a both situation, because I think that if our goal was to avoid using county general dollars, and there's no mill levy dedicated to the Missouri Valley Complex now, I would ask that, or suggest that we try to develop a way to use the reserve dollars so that we're not asking the full commission for anything other than what we've already got in front of us for the reboot process. That way, we're not dealing with this idea that it's a massive budget, because it's been mothballed for decades. So, you know, it's the percentages, when you're going from 88,000 up, yeah, but the 88,000 was basically the idle cost of not doing anything with it.
Let me interrupt there. That document that was sent out is not accurate, because what was approved last year for operating budget included the asphalt, the snow, the grading, so the document that I had used was not quite correct. Because that 95 was in there, the snow removal, the asphalt maintenance, and the grading was in last year's budget on top of that 88.
Oh.
So that document is incorrect.
So those are deferred dollars.
Yes.
Okay, so then that makes it less bad.
The difference between last year's and this year's really is the phase 3.
Yeah.
Everything else was in the same budget for 20.
So just, I want a point of clarification. You're saying, now knowing that those are deferred dollars, is your question still regarding the 150,000 that you feel should come out of the reserve fund still as well? And then I have a follow-up.
I think to avoid as much friction with the commission as possible, as long as there is a reserve fund, we should be using it.
Okay, so my follow-up question that's probably gonna go both ways here is, you've already mentioned, Commissioner, that $150,000 total is most likely, I don't even know if I can go that far, could potentially decrease.
Yes.
So is the friction point at this point that you need to know before we're going to have to add, or are you going to need to know what's on, to request in this budget before what we know is going to actually be expensed in phase 3?
I would have that a question with a question. Marie's motion last year for phase 1 and 2 came out of reserve dollars, not out of general fund. So if your idea is that those dollars should come back out of reserves again, then it should come off of this operational budget.
Okay.
Are we better off looking at it as planning money rather than
Phase
talking
three.
about phase three? Because my point has been that we do need some planning money, and this is part of the planning out there.
But then I agree with Dustin's comment again too. I mean, is planning coming out of reserve fund rather than operational funds?
I would say this would be very acceptable to come out of the reserve fund as planning money.
That would be keeping with kind of the culture of
With
the
the
group has
culture, yep.
been.
Yep,
Do you want a formal motion
No.
for that? So I totally agree, it should come out of reserves if that's
Okay.
what the real amount is.
and that helps me a lot when I walk into Tuesday's meeting.
Yeah,
We scratch that item and that goes reserve.
yeah, I would definitely fight against putting grading, snow removal and that sort of thing out into a reserve fund, you know,
Right.
That's operational,
clearly,
yeah.
exactly.
That's operational.
But I agree too, in keeping with what this group has basically recommended for consistently for over a year.
Yep,
But can we get it approved for expenditure during this process and not have to go back? Can it be brought forward as an expenditure now in the budgeting process? As
in
planning?
order for it to be on the budgeting process, you would have to have it in the operational budget. So phase three, once we're ready for phase three, we'll have to go back to commission for a specific vote coming out of reserve funds. No different than phase 1 and 2 did.
But if you would ask it be approved now, as far as the budget for 26 coming out of there, it could be done at this point in time. So it would be pre-approved. It'd be approved in the, because the kind of point from the last meeting is we keep going back, or we have to keep going back for all these little things, we're not getting it approved in the budget process as part of the process for the operations of it.
I would say before I would need you to define the planning process and the dollars and what they're for before I would be able to go back to commission to do that.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring it up so we might kick the can, but I do believe it's the appropriate time to kind of bring it up. Would it behoove this committee to at least discuss and potentially propose to the commission to establish a policy related to the restricted fund? Because we've had that discussion in the past, Auditor Sponskowski indicated that no, he was not aware of any such policy adopted by the commission. I just feel that that might be a good pairing with this ask of, we are going to use this as a case in point example of how that restricted fund should be used, and therefore develop a policy from it.
Well, and we also have past history in the last year. This is what we've requested from the commission to do, and this is how we would like to use it moving forward, and here's our thoughts of what it would be used for, yeah.
Madam Chair, will the county commission budget out of other reserve funds?
That's the other thing, is that I think that the message to the school commission is, we wanna use as much out of the reserve rather than general fund as possible, in exchange for them not using the reserve fund as a piggy bank.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the deal.
yeah. And they've done that up until the last 3 years. And we know that.
Yeah, deficit of 8.46 million.
Last year, we even went to, in order to buy down our levy, you know, we went to all of the reserve funds last year in our budgeting process. The VA has a reserve fund of X. In order to balance that budget, we took out some of the reserve funds. We did that in every department last year, all the way across the board, so that we didn't have to raise the dollars, if you will, that were levied to the residents. And so, to answer Steve's question, yes, we have gone back to other reserve funds to do that. Very specifically last year to the point of 2.5 million combined between all of the funds.
It's a budgeted line item.
Right.
And with that extra bond revenue surplus, you shouldn't need to do that, at least this time, with the extra from the excess that was.
The half cent sales tax, yeah.
Or is that kicked down the road?
That has been dedicated by Burleigh County Commissioners to be used for tax relief. So it will not be used for any other specific item, but in the buy down. Now, we work on this 3% and we get we actually get an opinion from some lawyer that tells us this 3% is gonna be based on your levied dollars, and if we're only levying 15 million, and that's our cap, that could put us in trouble 4 or 5 years from now. In the last year, just point and take, we're down 3.5% on our sales tax revenue this year from last. Well, if that continues, and we don't have the sales tax to replace the levy, we're gonna find ourselves in a hole in 5 years.
Yeah, now, what's interesting about that is that the reason that we went with the language that we did on that was specifically because if we locked ourselves into dedicating to the purpose rather than dedicating to replacing the dollars for the purpose, we would have been in a bigger pickle. So the language we went with was more flexible to avoid this exact situation.
Yes, and that's why I need the attorneys to give us that opinion based on that language, because in my opinion, like you said, the way we drafted that, our levy should be at our budget of 40 million, and the 3% should be based on that, not what we're charging our residents. But the initial conversation has been, it could hurt us because it will go down to what we levied the residents. So, like I said, we did our best to try to make sure we were doing the right thing for the residents of Burleigh County, and right now, because of what the state did, we don't have answers.
And as far as I was concerned at the time, we left too much opening, so.
We're gonna be still talking about this
I
before
know.
Kay's gotta leave, so I will remove phase 3, obviously, by your wishes, that should be out of reserve funds, and that'll change that quite a bit.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Could I just interject for a second?
Sure.
Madam Chair, committee members, just to add just a little bit of clarity, because I don't want you guys to vote on anything without hearing this, but last year when we gave the proposals to the board, we had 4 phases in there. First 2 phases were approved last year, which set us on this venture to move forward with the planning, platting, and getting us to this point. Phase 3, which was identified as a design phase, right? So phase 3, you being in the city of Bismarck, the city does require you to, like any developer, to grade your project, grade the right-of-ways, to install your water and sewer, and to work with the city on a storm design, right? And then the city will put the packet together and the plans designed together for the roadway to be assessed. So you can assess the storm sewer and the paving, and by their policy, the water and sewer would be constructed and paid for by the developer. And so I don't believe I've ran across a situation where you being public, right, that you'd be able to have the city design the water, the sewer, bid that out, and do that by assessments. Now, we can ask that question, but that design fee was for the purpose of moving that process through. The one clarifying point that I'd make is the phase 4 portion, which was the admin and inspections. So if you have an intention of, say, moving next year to construction and getting that done, you would need to not only get those designed, get them all done, but then you need to be able to bid that, have the admin and inspection process. So the city would inspect from their standpoint, but then we would have also inspections of the various components that came out of phase 3 that we had identified. Also, as a clarifying point, in phase 3, we were asked, when we put that proposal together, to also put a cost together of what it would take to design and get an approval for an RV park, and then also one of the first parking lots. And so that was also included in there. So that process with the city of Bismarck would look like a site plan, and that site plan then would be ran through the city and would be ran through as an approval for a permit. So just wanted to clarify so you guys had clarity on exactly what was in that number. Okay,
Thank you.
any questions?
Thank you. So I'm a little unclear on the rest of the agenda item, development of county commission schedule.
Keep going.
Operations and management, so just, we've been through the operating budget. Improvement district, we kind of talked about that a little bit. Overview and discussion of current leases. Steve, I got all those leases to you guys. Steve has sent them out to all of you guys for review. Now, is that, I guess the really question is this, do we want to continue on with lease or operation agreements?
Yeah, this is, definitely need to hear from the group on this, but this is where I enter the conversation with the understanding that when we looked to move to P Public, there was discussions at that point that we would need to take a look at the leases specifically and move them to user agreements because of the use of the land. That's been brought up a couple of different times, and I don't know that I have a whole lot of direction or clarity on the sense there. I do know that we've also discussed the differences among those agreements, not only dates, even before the meeting started, there was some discussion there about the difference in terms of length of those leases.
Is it time for me to sit down with state's attorney lawyer? And
I really think we
create
need
a
to
new
know where we're.
document so that we're all on the same page of an operating agreement or a lease agreement?
I think we need to know what our legal framework, or at least keep us in between the ditches on those kinds of discussions, because we might develop something here that sounds really great that is just not legally feasible or doesn't match with what we're allowed to do with zoning, so on and so forth. Because I feel that whatever we end up on with the lease versus agreement or otherwise also really kind of dictates the makeup of this committee and what we can and can't do going forward. So I really think that that's a hinge point right now, but I would love to hear from the rest of the table.
Well, and you're gonna need two types of operating agreements, one for the grandfathered in and then one for the new, because the existing leases are very friendly to the occupants, and I can't imagine a lot of them are gonna want out of those deals, so it's gonna have to be commensurate, and it's not the existings aren't a revenue generator to speak of, so, yeah, I think having the lawyers look at what can be done and then giving the committee options is probably the best approach.
Okay. I will make a point then to get with state attorney lawyer and we'll take a look at that. I don't know where her opinion is, one way or the other, but I like the idea of operational agreements rather than leases, but
Right.
I don't know one way or the other.
So I feel, and I had this note to bring up before, around this time, but I want to read, to reinforce our purpose, that our purpose, as quoted, is to formally engage representatives of the organizations currently operating by lease, facility ownership, and with program and development interest in the Missouri Valley Complex for the purpose of complex management, and programming, site and facility improvements and operations. And I think that it's very important to keep that, it's basically our mission statement, could be better written, but it's basically our mission statement, and that any discussion about leases or operating agreements may impact, or that may impact those discussions. So I just want to make sure that we're always coming back to what we promised the citizens of Burleigh County we were going to do.
Right, right. You know, and as Dustin brought up, I certainly do not want to change this for the current tenants, because Buckstop Junction has got decades of work into that facility, and we certainly don't want to change that. Now, the next item on your agenda will have a whole other conversation, but as much as I objected to even listening to the gentleman on Monday night, they allowed the realtor who was interested in all 300 acres of Missouri-Ville Fairgrounds to present, shouldn't say present, but let us know that he's looking for 300 acres right underneath the WAPA lines, which could be us or the piece north of us. Either way, it is a data center that they're looking for. I don't think he turned out very well from the conversation.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch, I missed that one.
Yeah, you should go back and watch that. I don't think he turned out very well. But he just basically presented that he's been charged with finding 300 acres in this area underneath the WAPA lines, whether that's wherever he can get it, he doesn't care. And so that was the conversation that happened Monday night at the commission meeting.
So many questions, but I better go watch the video before I ask those questions.
Oh,
Wayne, I know
hammer
you
at
would.
it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Commissioner Munson, now that you brought that up, we can't be selling that land out there to some, like, especially as AI garbage. We don't want that in this county, period.
That was if you watch the meeting, that was pretty much the consensus of 3 out of the 5 commissioners. 1 didn't speak at all. But yeah, we don't want that. The hard part is it's in city limits, and the city already allows it.
It does.
And so it's within
But
code.
they finalized their code on,
They've had
data
an
centers?
approved code, the county has not.
Oh, that might be what I'm thinking.
Right,
of.
the
Okay,
city
yeah.
has, and that land both north of us or the complex, they're within the city limits. And so my hope is that we hold firm. Again, they asked the questions to make sure they knew what the end goal was of the land. I've received 40, 50 emails since Monday. Absolutely do not sell, absolutely do not. Some, all caps, double spaced,
Don't yell at me in text.
Yeah, you don't yell at me in the email, but they were yelling. So there was no dollars, there was no nothing. He just pretty much said that he's been charged with finding land.
Okay.
The interesting part is my conversations with data center developers trying to work through a code or a policy for Burleigh County. And this is the same group that has data centers in Jamestown and Ellendale. Very successful ones, not the bad one that we hear about in the news. He very bluntly said there's not enough power in Burleigh County for them to even consider.
No, that's why it's not an ideal place.
That would
His-
make our rates go sky high around here.
According to Jamestown and Ellendale, it would drop them.
Yes.
It drops,
Yep.
yes, it drops your rates, impossibly, because of how they
Not
work.
Williston, that one up there is, but see, that's the hard part, you hear the bad, you don't hear the good. But the Ellendale and the Stutzman County ones have dropped everybody's rates.
For
But,
now.
but the reality of it is,
Can I just say something?
of course,
I didn't write an email. Primarily because like, I watched the commission meeting. And like, this is the deal. To even entertain it and to tell him to come back with a better presentation is I don't even know, I don't have a nice word to say about it. This is the deal. If Burleigh County, if the people that you serve with want to entertain the idea of selling the land, then let's entertain the idea of selling the land and sell the damn
And
land.
be done.
And be over, cause this is ridiculous. So like,
We don't know what to do moving forward.
correct, how in the world, you know, if we look down here, there's a lease agreement for the horse equestrian center. You guys, this is the biggest thing coming to that facility in 20 plus years since the 4-H building was built. Why would you build a building? Well, no, you're gonna sell the land before they can build their building. That's ridiculous. So I do not know what the answer is, whether it's well, one, there's no public comment at the meetings yet. You guys are gonna be establishing that so we can start coming once a month and
You are
just.
always welcome to come to the commission meeting,
No,
and
but-
yes, you are.
Well, we are welcome, but to speak to this, to be like, you need to decide. Cause either the message needs to be our fairgrounds is not for sale, or put it up for sale. Cause here's the deal. The land that was sold that was public, and so it's public record in Allendale, they got over $60,000 an acre. At 360 acres, that guy comes back to you and says to Bittner and the rest of them, I'm gonna give you $23 million. How in the world do you say no to that? So that's the deal. Like, we can talk about all this, but this is real money. It's not gonna be 20,000 an acre. When they come, it's going to be millions. It's gonna be like half your budget for a year.
She more
I
emphatically
mean-
said what I said last meeting.
This is the deal. It's crazy, cause we can sit here and, I mean, the amount of money in the last, since I've become an adult, that we have spent on planning, to Swenson Hagen, to KLJ, or to whoever, is astounding. And we're gonna, again, we just spent however much last year, and for what? For nothing. Because should you build a road? Maybe, maybe not. Why would you build a road? Why would we continue to do any of this if we're gonna sell the land in a year?
That's
Why
a
don't we wait for the
ridiculous
landman
process.
to come back and offer you the money and decide if the money's worth it?
But, and this is where county needs to develop policy of what it wants to do, because it's acting like a teenager that doesn't know what college you go to. And it's really, like, at this point, based on the dynamic between Burleigh and Bismarck, Burleigh shouldn't open the door to let Bismarck dictate anything in that area. So as long as Burleigh owns the land, Bismarck can't decide what is and is not going to go on it. And so it becomes a stalemate easement, essentially. And then, so I think you're right, but the commission needs to make decisions, you know, and decide what it wants to do.
I would encourage you to show up at the next meeting and let your opinions be known.
When's the appropriate time? Cause I mean, I know there's a public hearing, but that is very for the treasurer and the auditor position,
Yep.
and that's it.
At the beginning of every meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, there is an open
Starting
time
in
to talk
August.
about
Starting in
any agenda
August.
item.
Yep.
No, that's the school board. Only in
Right.
August, they have to, because the state's making them,
Right.
develop a policy. Oh, you need to watch the meeting about how they're gonna control what we say and how long we get to
Oh, I
talk.
watched
And
that
whether
one.
we agree with what they say, we might get 1 minute. But if we like what they say, they could have 30 minutes, cause one of the commissioners, he's willing to sit and listen for 30-some minutes to someone who's got lots to say that he must agree with.
Mhm.
At the chair's discretion.
Oh, yeah, whoever the chair is gets to decide whose opinion they like and don't like, and who they're gonna let talk and not talk for more than 1 minute. It's crazy to
This
me.
turned into a kind of commission meeting all of a sudden, didn't it?
You know, I was just prepped for it a couple days ago, so I'm still in commission mode, I'm good.
Yes,
Commissioner,
hold on.
Bittner, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I
What?
Is there any language, like you talk a lot about the language, is there any language anywhere that would prevent that group or any group currently right now from buying that if they agree? Is there anything in there now or that could be more easily put in there that says this is our purpose? and you can't do that. You can't buy it, it's not for
They've
sale.
already
Is there
sold off
anything else?
land.
Dustin would know
Because we've
this.
done a lot of work, as you said, and it's crazy.
There was chatter early on about when the county got it from the state, there might be a clawback or a right of first refusal type of thing, but I
Yeah.
don't think anybody ever found that.
No,
Other than that, the
And chances are there's a sunset clause.
the concrete solution is a home rule charter amendment preventing them from selling it. Just protect it.
Game on.
You see what I mean? Because that group, the horse equestrian group has put a ton of time and money. We put a ton of time and money, as you very well said and articulated, right? And here we sit.
right.
For what, right? So, I mean, if there's something that can be put in there that says, okay, we've got all these things going on, this line in the sand says, you can't do that. So then everybody can move forward with something, no matter what is decided here, right?
The state's attorney was asked for an opinion. Chair Bittner suggested that the gentleman that presented look at the century code, because I don't think we can sell anything without putting out for public bid. I mean, I think it has to, if somebody can't just walk in and write a check out and say, I wanna buy the land, and we approve it at a commission meeting. I mean, it has to be done in a certain way.
But that guy's got way more money than all of us put together.
Correct.
So it'll go out for, is there anything that would prevent that with this particular piece of land, or could something be?
That's what I asked at the last meeting too, is the door's been open now.
Yep.
I'm not so much concerned about guy that can't present. I'm concerned about all 10 or 50 thereon that have way bigger pocketbooks than any of us.
Yeah, you're open up to the world.
Yeah.
I mean, data centers aren't just North Dakota, United States, they're all
No.
over the place.
Yeah. And I think Dustin might have the right thought process here is home rule charter language that would restrict.
I think maybe we gotta put on our own agenda a discussion that we as a committee ask the commission to place a home rule charter amendment on to the ballot, asking the public to secure existing property and establish the procedure above and beyond existing procedure for disposal.
Yes, back up on that a little bit. So I've been involved with that place out there for 40-some years. And way at the beginning, when we first got word of that land coming up for sale from the Department of Institutions, they were willing to sell it to us for the purpose of a fairgrounds only. It wasn't supposed to be used for commercial property. So I fall back on that one.
And that is, I've read that in the agreement, the purchase agreement. I don't know how the county was able to sell the parcels that they did, because it was written in there very specifically that it had to be used for a county fair.
Yeah.
One of the interpretations that I was told was that Buckstop Junction has satisfied that need for the county fair, if you will, because it is a public, it's a facility used by the public. I don't know if that's, again, told, be careful. I don't know how much of a fact that is. That would need to be an attorney that interprets that as well.
Yeah, Bob Knifel, when he was county commissioner, he got that $500,000 levy approved for that property out there, the first few acres. So, and then after that, we went back to the county and see if we can get the rest of that property out there, we can utilize that somehow.
Yeah.
I know half of it's in a slough out there, but we'll make use of that
Oh,
eventually.
So the question is then,
Hang on.
Let's go.
Okay.
so the question, if that's in there 40 years ago, that it can't be used for any commercial, this home job, where is that with what you're saying, I guess?
It's all based on what the lawyers say they can do.
Yeah.
So you have, the only way to stop something from happening is to put something in there that prevents them from doing it and prevents them from finding a loophole. Perhaps one of the things is, as long as the sale of the land goes into the reserve fund, then it's considered fairgrounds. That's kind of like how the school lands trust works with oil land and all that kind of stuff. And that goes back to principal versus interest and all that. There's AG's opinions on that. But Yeah, your only solution is to come up with a strategy and ask the commission to follow that, put it in front of the people, or do it yourselves. Go to get petitions.
Madam Chair, if I can, you've got 15 minutes left.
I did some quick shuffling, so.
Okay.
But I still
Okay.
want to respect the time as a
Just
members
wanted
of
to
the
make sure,
committee, yeah.
we can talk about this some more. We should get Swenson and Hagan up here so we're not taking
Yeah.
any more of their time, and then we can bring this back around afterwards. I'm fine.
I agree, and looking through your agenda items, I feel that we've satisfied the discussions on some of those, because as for the
Satisfied
next.
or just had?
Pardon?
Satisfied or had?
We
I'm not
satisfied our
satisfied.
obligation. Satisfied the obligation, but as for your next one, it would have been overview and discussion of current lease and operating development. I think it's premature to have that discussion around the table until you have been able to have a chance to meet with State's Attorney Letter.
Yep.
So I agree that
Okay.
we would be able to move on to Swenson and Hagan.
Madam Chair, if I might, approximately 2001, the county went back to the state legislature and had their clause for a fairground purpose removed.
Oh,
Yep.
2001?
They went back about 2001, we've looked at the record, and it was about that time period that one of the local legislators took it back and they removed the clause of required to have a fairgrounds, which allowed them to sell the first pieces of property.
I was wondering how that happened.
Just like that.
Hi.
Hi, Howard, welcome back.
Madam Chair, Commissioners. If your zoning were to be approved for the P-Public, I believe there are some restrictions about the use of a data center on that parcel of property. Now, that doesn't prevent a sale, but it does create some difficulties.
We might have discussed this, and I hate to derail the conversation, but it sparked in my head. So when we are zone P public,
We are. We are zoned.
right, because of that though, is there any restrictions on being able to parcel out pieces of that property, or is it all just as one?
The plating mechanism would actually parcel if we choose to bring pieces, which there will be, right? Because we've got some state land and some city land and some stuff like that. So, and then of course, there's the pieces that are the wetlands and stuff. So there are some pieces that are parceled with the plat piece, right? That could come in to play. Although that's easily can be changed. There's a lot of combinations you can do to bring it all into one parcel. And if somebody were to purchase the property and have some other use for that, you can replat right-of-ways, which is, you know, what we're ultimately moving towards.
I was just thinking how difficult we could make it for.
This mechanism probably isn't the mechanism you wanna utilize. It would add a difficulty, but it doesn't restrict or prohibit it, right?
I'm all about difficulties, but go ahead, you can,
Sure.
please
You
continue.
bet. Okay, so, update on wetland mitigation contract and schedule. The contract has been sent to Moore Engineering. They should be a couple weeks into their, process. They were gonna have a couple weeks and then start doing their tabletop review and then turn around after that and then start getting out here to actually do the field work. So they should be somewhere in between getting that tabletop review done for what they feel they're gonna have to tackle and getting out here to start getting boots on the ground and doing those evaluations of the land. So I would anticipate maybe within a month here, we should have some conversation back, a preliminary report, and an opportunity to really start digesting this, and we can bring that back forward to this group for a debrief. Okay. Item number 2, the update on zoning change, plat, development, and schedule. When we started the process to do the wetland delineation, we actually stuck the plat kind of on a temporary hold until we can get that feedback. Of course, that final right-of-way layout the wetland, that may or may be on the property, we know there's some there, but is it something that's going to be in future right-of-ways that we're looking at? And then, of course, how do we handle that, right? In previous meetings, we discussed a couple avenues which were, we can avoid them. We could turn around and we could say, okay, we're not gonna avoid them, but we would like a process that's quicker because maybe we don't wanna mitigate those. And so we could go and check with, Ducks have a program in the state where they bank. You can buy credits into that bank. And so that's a avenue that we have. And then also, thirdly, there is a avenue where we could be going in here and saying, we have an impact, we want to do this impact, we feel we can avoid that impact, and we'll come up with a mitigation plan. And if that mitigation plan then is something that is decided by the board, then we would be coming back and saying, more, we would like you to get a price put together to actually roll that through the Corps so that we can have it properly permitted. Now, if we decide that these impacts are unavoidable and we want to move forward with a duck bank purchase, we would come back to more as well and say, we need you to get us a price for that. There is some work that we do with the court, but it's a little different, right? So we're not coming up with this mitigation plan and how all of that works. It's more the process of getting to the court, a permit, discussion with that, allowing them to get out for public comments, and then once those comments come back and everything's collected, then we'd be greenlit to go and secure the duck portion. So that's why the plat has been temporarily set on hold until we can find out what the impact is, if any, how to proceed with it, and then again, how we want to deal with this plat in the right of way and the impacts, okay? So you can see how, you know, your previous discussion about this design element, right, could be different depending on how your conversation goes. I mean, if you came in and said, we're gonna leave everything over the existing road network, move all the right-of-ways, we're not gonna do anything, and that becomes, you don't need that design. But we do know that somewhere in here we'll have to get some water and sewer and things like that. So it's trying to have, until we get this wetland thing, a little bit of a moving target for these other line items with in regards to platting and stuff. Any questions on any of that? The wetlands, kind of the process, the platting, all of that? Okay. Okay. Infrastructure design and construction considerations. It's gonna kind of vary a little bit depending on what the first two items come back with, but let's just say theoretically, we're still moving forward with dedication of the public right-of-way, and we want the city to move forward with us. There would be the design for the water and sewer to get everybody proper fire coverage, to make sure that the equestrian center, if you guys keep the property and everything goes the way you've been moving forward, that you can supply infrastructure to everybody, to all these areas. And then, of course, working with the city on a storm design and working with the city on a street project. So we do have some existing infrastructure in place. There is an asphalt road that's on the western rim of the plat. And so that's something that once we start having this discussion about the plat again with the wetlands, we'll come back so everybody put some thought into if that section we feel is something we want to stay. Does it stay private within an easement, or does it go into a public right-of-way? And if it does, then there's some consideration whether or not the city would actually accept that section of road, how that looks. They may want to have that as an urbanized section. And so that's some of the feedback that we got initially with the plat was they'd like to see some of these sections in here urbanized, especially the east-west major road collector piece. And they want that to kind of be designated as that getting back out to Expressway, right? And then, of course, we've got kind of right along the WAPA easement there, we've got another roadway section that we've preliminarily put down on our mapping and said, you know, here's another section to kind of get up to a north access. So some of the conversations we've had so far have been that north access and that west access are 2 points that we'd like to keep. We've conveyed that to the city. The city's good with that. We would also have our connection back onto, it's not 52nd, it's,
Yeah, Expressway,
East side.
or, Main,
yeah.
East Main.
Yep. And so, that would create that east-west link for everybody, and so I think the city's in a fairly good spot with the plat and how they would come in, but we did go back at one point and ask, you know, hey, can we put a rural road section in here with ditches and culverts, and they don't want to accept that section for them to ultimately take the right of way and manage it. So then we would end up with an urbanized section with curb gutter. So those are some of the things that we're working on. We don't quite have an answer yet for the storm sewer where we would like, or stormwater pond, where we would like to put our stormwater pond, of course, is always at the bottom of a watershed. And that's where we feel we may have some wetlands. So that's, will be more to come on that conversation as well.
Okay.
Any questions on infrastructure layout? One thing I would point out is in some of the previous meetings, we had a conversation about the plat, and just when we come back to that, we'll want to get some input on road locations, feelings for these different right-of-way sections, and how we ultimately land on all of that, so that we can move that process forward. Then stormwater plan, the plat, all of those things would move forward through the city's process, and we would convey a stormwater management plan for the whole property to the city for their review and approval as part of the planning process. Okay?
So we'll just keep you on the agenda for the foreseeable future.
You bet. So, I would anticipate within, you know, if not the next meeting, the meeting after that will definitely be moving forward again.
Okay,
So,
well, thank you.
thank you.
All right, the next agenda item is committee discussion, something that's better at Robert's Rules of Order than I. Since it's a sub item underneath a major item, do we need to motion to table the discussion on the form, function, and operations? Or can we just,
Push it.
that's what I thought. However, there is one item under committee discussion to bring up, is the request to develop lease and development agreement for the Ag and Equestrian Center. I bring this up more for a chain of command discussion than approval or consideration of such, especially since we now know that we want to discuss with state's attorney lawyer on agreements and that sort of thing. It is my understanding, and I'm going to look heavily upon our liaison to the commission, or our representative on the commission, that any future potential user would bring the suggestion, idea, request to this committee to consider engaging the commission engaging in a lease or a agreement with a future user, and that this committee would hear that request and say, yes, we fully welcome you with open arms, please take this to the county commission, therefore you would place it on a county commission agenda to then have a discussion there where that user group would answer any questions that may or have a presentation of such. Am I correct in that idea of the chain of command?
That's my understanding as well. They would present here, if you approve, you as the chair would introduce them at a county commission meeting to have that lease approved or agreement approved.
Okay.
Like I said, we'll need to
Like,
find
we
out.
wouldn't get in on the nitty-gritties of that particular agreement?
Well, you would have to get into some of the details to approve or not approve of that group. And please don't take this for, if I came to you and said, hey, I'd like to get an operating agreement for 25 acres so I can put up a data center on the Missouri Valley Complex. You need to get into the details of my proposal and approve or deny. And if you denied it, I would still think you would bring it to Burleigh County Commission to say, hey, this is the presentation we received.
Right.
The commission or the Missouri Valley Complex Committee's recommendation is to deny it. And this is why. Same thing. The Ag and Equestrian Center comes in front of you, presents their plan, what they want to do, how they want to utilize the land. You as a group approve or deny, and then you bring that to the commission for their final stamp.
Okay.
But it would be anything. We want to take and grow the oval track to forgive me if, I don't know if it's a half mile or 3/8 mile, and if we want to grow it to the next size, that would come here, you guys would approve or deny and bring that to the commission for their stamp.
So it appears that there is a request from the Equestrian Ag Center Committee to develop a lease and development agreement. Can we take action on that?
I would think you would want a proposal from the Ag and
Because they're
Equestrian Center.
requesting I'm not sure on the request, is they're requesting permission from us to get one developed, or do they have one developed that they want to present? So, I don't see why we would need to micromanage giving them permission to develop that.
No,
Well, I guess, Madam Chair,
Yes.
the group would ask approval here to bring back the proposal for lease for this review first. And that would be the action taken today, to ask the group to develop the proposal and bring it back to this group.
What?
I guess, Marie, you might have the same
Yeah, I guess.
furrowed brow as I do.
So, one, we don't even know if we're doing lease agreements or memorandum of understandings or what we got going on. So I think, well, Steve, you're with the horse people, sort of, okay? Or horse people if you watch this. I think that we have to get whoever you're gonna ask.
Yep.
Whoever the person is in charge to say, legally, this is what you should do that's best going forward. Because this group's gonna build you a building, they're gonna give it to the county at the end of the day to run, or whatever, and this is how it's gonna look. So I think it's kinda complicated, so I don't know that I wanna say, I don't wanna make any motions, cause I don't know what I want them to do. So I think you need to get your lawyer to tell us what we want them to do, but you can tell them what to do without waiting till July. If she tells you tomorrow, tell him to tell them, they don't need to wait for us to tell them to do it. You know what I'm saying? We don't need, you can just bring it. If you have something, bring it.
that's what
Then
I,
we'll run it by the lawyer. I
Right.
mean, I don't know if they already have one in their drafts.
See, that was my furrowed brow, was, when I first read the agenda item, I understood it as that they had a purchase, or a development agreement that they wanted permission to present to the county. And at which time I would have been inclined to say, well, if you have one, let's look at it, and absolutely yes. But I reread the request is, they don't need our permission to have one developed. I feel that their presence on this committee gives them already the permission to get it developed, and then it's up to the commission to say, yeah, we'll sign that agreement or not.
Right.
Am I misinterpreting the intent here?
I think this just brings back the whole point we've talked about for a couple months, is that we don't have a process. We don't have any formatting, and so the group has felt to ask the Missouri Valley Complex, is it okay in your eyes as a complex committee to move forward with developing a lease and bring it back?
If it's gonna be. Once again, I don't know that we know it's gonna be a lease though, sadly. So I think you need to get
so let's
that
just
figured
use the
out.
term agreement.
Some kind of agreement.
Yep. I've
And I
already
don't-
sent the
and they're
email
gonna have-
requesting the meeting, so
Okay,
We're-
so Yes, I mean, yes, cause they need something with the county, I mean,
Yeah,
they gotta get something on paper quick.
and I would be willing to have this discussion with the Ag and Equestrian Complex, just from my own personal views on, as a committee member, not as the chair, but I feel like we are being expected to micromanage their process. You know, we've had discussions about going back to the commission a couple of times to get permission, even though we've seemed to have gotten the permission a couple of times. When do we stop asking for permission to continue going forward on their planning process? And maybe that would be a good point to yours on the process and procedures is, what do they see as steps in their process that they need this committee's or the commission's approval to move forward on?
Based on the last meeting, Madam Chair, I don't know if I know either.
Yeah. 'Cause, you know, I'm sitting here going, develop, you know, definitely bring your agreement proposal and what you want to do and absolutely go forward and conquer, as long as, you know, it's not that we're gonna build a data center.
But your last presentation to Burleigh County, you know,
Right,
to me, that, what we did, we took action here, you took action, you brought it to the county commission, that was their request. Once you approve, you bring it to the commission for their final approval. No different than planning and zoning, anything else that happens. That's the proper procedure that should be used. It's heard here, it's approved or denied here, then it's taken to the commission for final. And I think the Ag and Equestrian Center's request at this point is appropriate. Well, I think they should now be given a chance to be on the next agenda for their presentation,
Yes.
to come here, to give you their thought process so that you can approve or deny it.
and that's, when I read the agenda
I thought they were
item,
coming to do that.
that's what I
Right.
thought, even though I knew Alan was not going to be able to be here, I
Yep.
thought that there was something for us to look at to say, yeah, go
Yep.
ahead and we'll take it to the county.
Right.
Or, no, it's a data center, I'm kidding, by the way. That's what I anticipated was the discussion point.
Right. So I think if anything for you as a committee, I think you should make a motion to request the Ag and Equestrian Center to present at the next meeting so that we can, if you really feel that that's what's needed. But to me, I think it's an agenda item that is put on there for them to present to the Missouri Valley Complex Committee, so that you have an item to take to Burleigh County.
I don't disagree on the latter, I'm not entirely on board with the former, but,
The former was if you wish.
okay, yes. Yeah, I just don't wanna hold up their process
Right.
any longer. And I want to make sure that we can use this almost as a case study on how to develop our own processes and procedures and expectations. So,
Now, you could also take it to the next level, and I'll speak a little forward for the Ag and Equestrian Center. They've been here, they've shown you what they're planning on doing, they've shown Burleigh County Commission what they've planned on doing.
yeah,
Do you need a presentation?
I wouldn't think so.
So then, if you wish, Madam Chair, you could ask for a motion and move forward.
That's what I yes.
No, we just need to see the lease agreement, so I feel like, for instance, if 4-H wanted to put up a snack shack, we wouldn't come to ask, well, I'd come, but I'd already have the proposal and say it's gonna cost $20,000 and will you
Yep.
approve it? Just bring it,
Yeah,
the
'cause
lease agreement or whatever.
We don't even need to approve it, to your
No.
point, we just need to,
see it
at
and then
this point, I
recommend
think
it's good.
this committee could, should anybody want to enter a motion, say that by the representation that we've already had at this committee, our approval is to go forward with the next step and have our liaison place that on a Burleigh County agenda. And personally, that's,
Now, and yes, I think you should make that motion, I think you should vote on that. my reservation for putting it on the next agenda would be making sure
That they have,
we know whether we're moving forward with an operating agreement or a lease agreement. So I do think it still comes back to this meeting a month from now to have that conversation. So that we understand what document we're using or what verbiage we're using. But if you guys wanted to make the motion that you should, as chair, present this to Burleigh County Commission so they can move forward, by all means, please.
Could we do the same thing with the Buckshot Junction out there? Put together some kind of a deal where, what we wanna do with future work out there, since we're already there? Would that work too, or?
well, I think that's,
That'd be too much.
well, and I had this to carry over to the next meeting, is we need to discuss the Missouri Valley Complex members' improvement needs. And I think that that would fall better under that
Okay,
item of discussion than bringing, and we kinda need to discuss that
Yeah.
as a committee in general, to focus on that, but yeah, that's, to Steve's point, we need policies.
Well, Madam Chair, I think the Ag and Question Group are asking for direction and asking to come back with the outline and develop of the lease or operating agreement, whatever the best fit is. And there's people in this committee who haven't seen the whole presentation either,
Right.
you know, and how it fits into the whole complex. It also has a lot to do with what Jason's doing with roads and everything out there too, so.
I would certainly.
Keep it come back to this committee and then, so that it's pretty well put in place before it goes to county commission. Worst thing happens, it ends up there at the big house and ends up back
Yeah.
down here again, so it's not gonna work well.
Yeah, it's just hard to not know what their wishes were with that request, so, yeah, I guess
I
we'll
would plan on
recommend to put it on the
presenting,
agenda.
I would plan on presenting myself next meeting, the operation versus lease. So, like I said, that I've sent that request off already to Julie. I forwarded to Julie all of the current leases that you've all seen, so she can evaluate. I'll push her to make sure I have an answer for our next meeting here, and then have the Ag and Equestrian Center come in at the same time so that we can have that all moving.
One note as you approach your meeting with state's attorney lawyer is the consideration of leases versus agreements in terms of long-term use and short-term hay, ag, that kind of thing. I would, you know, that if we're going for uniformity, to have those pieces in consideration too, so just a discussion point.
So that was one of the leases that I sent her, was the
Yeah.
hay, you know, so she's got them all.
Did they lease that cropland up there?
Yes,
I was gonna say, cause he's got corn planted already.
it's been leased, and part of the agreement is he will plant, cover crop in the fall.
why was that such a cheap rate on that rental?
Because he's paying for all the seed to go back in.
You still got a heck of a deal.
He did, but I wanted to cover
But it was
crop.
also a month too late,
Yeah, it was a little late.
normal.
But again, I wanted that cover crop and he's paying for it. So,
Not sure what kind of crop he's gonna get, they're only about that far out of the ground.
It's still in the growing season of corn, but,
Knee high by the 4th of July.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be. Yeah, that might be pushing it.
All right, are there any other items for discussion or any other business?
I have a quick question. Would it benefit the group or the people of Burleigh County? I type up Burleigh County Fairgrounds on Google and it comes up for Missouri Valley Complex. Would it benefit everyone to change the name instead of Missouri Valley Complex? Were the Burleigh County Fairgrounds?
Because that changed how many years ago?
Can't?
No.
Okay.
Can't do it.
Because-
It's not a fairground.
It's not a fairground.
it's not a fairgrounds.
The state
So,
said, no, she made us change our name.
yep.
Yeah. Okay. Any other business?
We can have a Burleigh County Fair at the Missouri Valley Complex.
And after a couple of years, we can rename it. We can't make this sense.
All right, next meeting is Wednesday, July 16th, same place, same time. Here, if I hear no objections to adjourning the meeting, I will consider this meeting adjourned.
You guys, 4 meetings.
That's a simple